One of the ongoing objections to changing lifestyle, changing your diet, following any of the recommendations you're making regarding diet is Grandpa Joe lived to 92. So, whatever. I mean, we're smarter than he was. We know more about exercising. So what's different about the food today in 2016 than the food from 100 years ago when, my grandfather was born? What's different about the food that would prevent someone who's born today from having the same results that someone from 100 years ago? What's different about today's food?
I think Grandpa Joe didn't have BPA and phthalates and EMFs and all these things we've been talking about that are in the modern world. I subscribe to the theory known as the total load theory, or more known amongst medical communities as allostatic load. Patricia Lemmer wrote a book called Outsmarting Autism in 2014, and she talks about this theory of total load, which is basically that your body has a certain capacity for toxins and different kinds of exposures and stressors from your environment in your life. And those could be emotional, those could be chemical. But at a certain point, you tip over. You've had too much exposure, and so your total load is too great. So Grandpa Joe may have eaten the same diet that you're eating, and it's pretty heavy in meats and carbohydrates, refined carbohydrates or whatever, and he lived to be 100, and you're, falling ill at 40, well, Grandpa Joe had a different total load than you do. So I think that if we put that into how we understand our health, it's an equation. It's how many things are we exposed to? What kinds of resilience do we have? So it's much more difficult to stay strong and healthy and resilient in 2016 than it was in 1939.
Several generations ago, people consumed in every socioeconomic group 3 to 5 times less meat and dairy. The poorer you were, the less meat and dairy you ate. The more you worked, the more you farmed. There was no such thing as a pesticide, fungicide, or herbicide before the Second World War. That the war machine that made millions of dollars on the death process literally wanted to make money. This is a petrochemical industry, and invented wonderful ways to get you sick, and told you that you were going to save lives and we'd wipe out world hunger. But we have more hunger on the planet today than we've ever had in the history. We have more slavery on the planet today than we've ever had in history. You don't know this because most of us live in our cushy little worlds and watch television and listen to the propaganda from mainstream media. And so the reality is the world is not what you've been told it is, nor is it your world. The world's wildly different. We also have, as you pointed out rapidly there, air pollution, clothes pollution. We wrote the definitive book on that, Killer Clothes. We're actually adorning our body with deadly petrochemicals. So you could eat the way I'm telling you, have great attitude, and still die if you put polyester and nylon on your bodies. And so this list goes on, and it's almost an endless list that could be depressing, but there's a resolve for this. There's a way to change. That's what we stand for. We're not all about sadness and unhappiness. We're optimists. And we're optimistic because we see what can happen in our own lives, in the lives of the thousands and thousands of people we worked with. We know what can happen in your life once you're willing and ready to make the changes. You're not a victim. You're not a victim. You still are living, most of us, in nations in this room and listening on the internet here, that we have freedoms. And we've got to use those freedoms and stand for those freedoms, or else we're not going to have them anymore.
Yeah, we didn't eat meat like we do now. I know, talking to my mother and my dad from their time, it was maybe Sunday they had meat. Sugar, hardly ever. And sugar now, since 1970, we took all the fat and fiber out of food that we can store on shelves, and we added sugar instead. So we're all being bombarded with sugar in so many ways, and high fructose corn syrup. Of course, we all had to have Coca-Cola and Pepsi, and then that opiates were put in your food. So opiates actually to make it even more addictive, so that when you started with that bag of potato chips, you couldn't stop yourself because opiates actually made you finish that bag. So we have degenerated our system. So what Grandpa Joe started out with, and then his kids and grandkids, you know, it's been a degeneration. And it takes 3 generations to get back in shape. So we start today. We're going to have great grandkids that will say thank you for doing this.
Do you know who we learned that they put synthetic opiates into commercial international foods? Former head of the Food and Drug Administration, Dr. David Kessler. So those of you that think that we just breezed over that and fabricated, there's not a word we say we can't stand behind. Read Dr. Kessler's book, The End of Overeating. Why you're doped up on your food and it's impossible for you to stop junk food, fast food, cookies, cakes, and these are multinational disease-causing criminal companies that are putting drugs in your food. It wasn't enough you were addicted to the sugar and fat and salt, now you're addicted to dope. What opiates are is heroin, by the way. These are synthetic opiates. I asked him personally, how do they get away with this? Isn't it illegal? He said, no, these are synthetic formulas. They are not opiates. They're synthetic opiates. Guess what? OxyContin and oxycodone happen to be synthetic opiates. I'm not saying that's what they're putting in there, but that's called a synthetic opiate. It's more addictive than the opiate itself.
Birthday parties would be celebrated 100 years ago with sweet potatoes. That was a big thrill. And grains were ground fresh. Every little house on the prairie had a stone mill, and grains go rancid really quickly once they're ground. And now people are buying grains that have been turned into flour months, if not years beforehand. And we know that rancid grains are toxic to the liver. So we're getting a lot of oils that have turned bad just from grains, which have been perceived as a good thing and aren't so great.
Okay, so if you could each make a final closing comment to address our audience and the people watching around the world, your final thoughts of what you'd like to leave them with.
Okay, I'll start. I think, as you've heard me say this evening, what I feel most strongly about is the fact that we have control of our health. All you need to do is take it back. Because as you said before, Brigitte, we have given our health over to doctors and to experts and to people that we think know better than we do. We've just lost touch with some very intuitive things about how to live healthfully and to live in harmony with the natural world. So my 2 cents would be, own your health, take control of it. Know that you have the ability to change things in your environment, to improve your health, and that there's always improvement, no matter, even if you have a genetic condition, there's always improvement, there's always things that you can do.
My 10 cents would be eat a wide variety of flavors, eat a wide variety of colors, and sometimes we might need to try different diets during different times in our life. What maybe suited you during pregnancy might not suit you at another time of your life. When you have teenagers, you may find we need to shift it a little bit. So be willing to transition and really listen to your family, because it's really about love and caring. And this is so important to learn about. So take responsibility and find the joy in becoming healthier. And by doing that, we'll be better stewards of the planet.
Probably the most important thing for us to do is to get back to common sense. It's funny, we have to have these symposiums and have 10 days of world experts talking to you about things that really you all know already. This is sort of like we commune and get together and all shake our heads on the internet or in this room. And we say, yeah. Well, you know this. This is inherently deep down inside of every cell in your body. Of course we don't want to have chemicals, but does that mean that you have to be responsible, as you've just said, to say no to that? I will not buy food. I will not use cleaning products. I will not adorn my body with chemicals. I will wear natural fiber clothes. I will not let my children just sit in front of a cell phone or a computer all day long. We will shut the television off, we will shut the cell phone, and we'll garden or pick weeds. You know, some of the advice you gave was brilliant. I will not be subservient to somebody because they're highly educated with a credential who seemingly means well in the vast majority of cases. I know these people personally and lots of them. But question. Become knowledgeable. Don't just go along with the program because they may not know and harmlessly lead you into the wrong direction. Challenge your governments. Your governments are a problem because your governments are not helping citizens anywhere in the world now. They are helping corporate interest. The corporations and their lobbies control worldwide governments. And they're the ones that allow genetic modification when the public overwhelmingly says no to genetic modification. In this country, 68% of the public do not want genetically modified food. 5, 6 states basically brought it up for a vote. The Monsantos of the world came in, spent 10 to 20 times more money than the opposition, and told you that your food's going to cost more, and these people don't have science, so it lost. Who doesn't want to know that you're eating a genetically modified organism that has never been tested? When I do research with world authorities before I write books, I'm stunned at some of the things. I didn't know that every drop of water had plastics and pharmaceutical drugs. And so be informed on this. If I can learn these things, and believe me, I'm no different than you, I'm just interested in truth. That's what I'm interested in. Learn these things. You'll make wise choices when you use common sense.
Put yourself in the driver's seat. You know, your body is very forgiving, and environment is also forgiving. And just don't let it go too far. You know, it's like all the wonderful things we've heard today is sometimes we think, well, have we gone too far? No, the whole thing about this conference is to tell you, no, we have so much we can do, and it is a time of forgiveness, because I think what we all feel like we have been a part of messing up, and that we kind of got into this lifestyle where we live outside of nature, where we put ourselves not a part of nature. You want to be a part of nature. That is where you came from. It's every cell in your body is in other parts of nature, and you are in total ecosystem with everything. So put yourself in the driver's seat and use the forgiveness that is given to you, and act on it, and take every day as a gift that what I can do to improve myself. That is your main responsibility. What you do with yourself is then hopefully will attract other people to want to be more responsible. But you're the driver. So have a good night.